Hey, good morning, guys. Welcome to day 2 of the Cobra rod build, where last time we were working on this rod, we got started with a blank, got the handle set installed, reel seat installed, and got some underwrap done in here between the grips where we're going to put the hook keeper. And then we got the first layer of epoxy out in front of the reel seat for labels. So today we're going to go through guide spacing using the laser LZR guides. We're going to go through how I came up with my guide spacing, how I adjusted my guide spacing, and then we're going to put the guides on, get the hook keeper on, and then go into labels. So y'all stick around. Okay, so let's talk about guides. Let's get this thing chucked back up in the power wrapper. Now, most blank manufacturers, in fact, I think maybe all of them now, will give you a guide spacing chart, their recommendations. Some of them are by blank, some of them are by style. They'll give you size guides, they'll give you spacing guides. But they all say, like the top of this one, is that these guide spacing layouts serve as a great starting point on your next Rod Geeks build. What that means is, this is not necessarily in gospel. And since this is a spiral wrap on a casting rod, it's more like a spinning guide layout anyway. So we'll go through that right now. So I've got the rod chucked back up in my power wrapper here to hold it in place for now. I've got a B473 layout already done, but I'm going to show you how I came up with that. We're going to pitch this for now. It's a pretty good reference, but not good enough in my opinion for what I'm trying to do. We're going to put a reel on it in a little bit and test the guide layout before we wrap them. I'll show you how to do that. And then we're going to do some labels and some other stuff. So let's get these guides on this rod. Now, this laser set starts with an 8, size 8 ring, and goes to a 6, and then we've got 5s for running guides, for the tip top in here. Okay, so I've got my guides laid out on my spacing. I've marked it on my power wrapper here. There's some hieroglyphics that only I understand, that are some basic layouts that I use quite a bit depending on the length and the power of the rod. Also, what I use quite a bit are these little rubber bandy things. They're super handy. How these work is you put them on the tip, slide them down, and they will hold your guides in place while you're wrapping, and especially while you're doing a layout. So we'll get these all on here and get these guides in place. Okay, I've got my rubber bands on. I'm going to put these guides on, get them lined up, and then we're going to put it in a jig I made. I'll show you how that works to test the actual guide layout. So we'll be right back. Okay, I'm just gonna tape this one on because it's a double foot. And tape will hold it just fine. I use my square here. So I can follow my layout I have on the power wrapper. Now you can use some surgical tubing for these larger ones too, but I find it's just an easy to use tape on the larger guides. Now let's see which I think I'd rather use. So on these smaller ones, I have my needle nose pliers here that have tape on them just to keep from scratching the guides. I can hold the guides with the pliers to get them under these little rubber band thingies here. What you do is you just slide them underneath, and sometimes they don't want to go. There we go. Okay, now we're going to throw a little glue on this tip top and get it set. Now, that's not a permanent install on the tip, but just enough to keep it in place while we run this next test. Okay, now we've got the guides on and what we think is the location that we want them. So I'm going to gear up here. I'm going to take it out of the power wrapper and I'm going to put it in my little test jig. I'm going to put a reel on it. This is actually the reel that's going to go on this rod. It's a low profile Cascade Zephyr BFS reel. I'm going to put this, I guess this is 20, this is 65 yellow Power Pro that I'm going to put on it just so you makes it easier for you to see it. It's probably going to run 20 pound 9X by CPF. It's the best small diameter braid I've found. But anyway, I'll put the yellow on so we can all see what's going on. So I'll get it set up in my jig and we'll be back. Okay, I got you guys set up out here looking at the way I'm looking at it. I put my rod in this jig that I built. Nothing fancy about it. It's just a piece of PVC strapped to some scrap plywood. I've got my reel mounted and I used a couple pieces of soft foam to stuff in there just to keep it from turning because of the weight of the reel. I got the light set up out here now. One thing I'm trying to show you guys, hopefully this will show, is that on this spiral wrap, you have to be careful that the line is not going to touch the blank. And since these are small frame guides, I mean this is an 8 and a 6 and we go to 5, typically this one would be 90 off of the top, and then this would be 180 off of the top, which will give us, 90 again. But what I've done, because the frame height is so low, which I do like, I've rotated this first running guide here about 45 degrees just to keep the line off of the blank. Now, out here where the bend happens and all the action is going on, this is a pretty good load on it, and you can see that we've got a pretty smooth transition with the line versus the blank until we get to here. So what I'm going to wind up doing is I'm going to slide, this is why we use the rubber bands, I'm going to slide this one down a little bit. I did have a couple extra guides in the kit, so I'm going to add a guide. That's why I put some extra rubber bands on. I'm going to add a guide. This is quite difficult to do, not in the power wrapper. But I've got my pick underneath the rubber band. I've got my guide. Got my guide. And my needle nose, and I'm going to slide the guide foot underneath the pick. like that. Okay, now we have enough, so we've got plenty of spacing here. Looks good. We're going to slide this one back a little bit. And now we've got a better transition, in my opinion, on the line going through. You got a nice smooth transition. That's a pretty good load on this rod. That would be a 3 or 4 pound fish, possibly. You won't be boat flipping with this rod because of the soft tip. The other thing about the spiral wrap is you're going to have less guides, because if this was a conventional wrap and the line was on top, you're probably going to need at least one more guide to keep the line from coming down and touching the blank. That's how you adjust guide layout. It's not that complicated. It took me forever to get it to where maybe you can see it on camera, but you get the drift here. It's just about making a smooth transition under a normal load on your rod. I'm going to put this baby back in the wrapper. We're going to wrap these guides up, get some epoxy on it, and get this thing ready to fish maybe tomorrow. Y'all stick around. Okay, well, we're back, chucked up in the wrapper, getting ready to wrap the guides. It'll take me about an hour to get these wrapped. I'll go ahead and knock that out. You guys don't need to see that, although I may run time lapse. So it'll take about 30 seconds your time to wrap a rod. And then we'll do labels and the hook keeper and get a second coat of epoxy on it. So don't go away. Okay, got all the guides wrapped. I pulled the tip top that I had put on temporarily and put it back on permanently. Next thing I need to do is I'm going to check my alignment on my guides, and how I do that is I'll just hold it up against a white background, making sure all the guides are perfectly in line, and then we'll get busy with labels and epoxy. Okay. Everything looks great as far as alignment. Now, let's talk about labels. Okay, now we've talked about labels in the past videos, but I was going to take a minute here to show you how I do my labels. Now, I have the Pearl label by K-Sun. I have the Label Editor Professional from Epson on this old laptop that I keep in here, and all I do on it now is labels, honestly. You buy these tapes. This one happens to be black on clear. I also have white on clear, gold, silver. I have a bunch of different color options. But what you do is you come up with your label. Let's see if I can get this thing to come open. Okay, I have a bunch of labels in here. I used the Adobe Suite to make my FTX labels, my logo labels, and then I just use the label maker here to print them. It's a piece of cake. I have them logged in here. So we're talking about an RGB73 medium heavy extra sensitive. I'll pull that up. There's the label. You can edit it. You can change the sizes. When it's time to print, click the print button. It's going to tell you that you're connected to the Pearl Label 360, which is this printer here. It has white on clear in it at the moment. You click OK. Checking for tape width. I do know that I have 1/2 inch wide tape in there. And then it prints. And there you go. There is the label that we're going to put on this rod in a little bit. So let's move back over there. One other little trick with labels is that the label that I just printed looks like this. It's all twisted, and when you lay it down and you're going to try to get it with your clear Scotch tape, it's a challenge. But what I did yesterday was I printed these labels ahead of time, and I've taken an old roll of tape with a little piece of paper that I cut, and what I have is my labels that I printed yesterday. I put them in here against the bend, so now they will lay down flat. If you leave them in here too long, they go back the other way, but this is the quick and dirty piece of cake, little shortcut to getting your labels to lay flat. You just have to print them the day before. There we go. That's the secret to making this easy. Now, I'll go ahead and pull my overhead camera back down here where we can get these labels put on, and we'll get ready for some epoxy. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a microfiber cloth here and just make sure I got all the dust off, because that also will show on the label. Then I'm going to take Scotch tape that's usually about twice as long as my label. I'm going to hold it tight. Now, the static electricity is going to make it jump like that, and it didn't go where I wanted it to. So you have to be careful. It's very dry and cool in here. It's Christmas Eve and it's about 40 degrees outside and no humidity, so a lot of static electricity in here. Did it again. Alright, this is getting where it's irritating. Let's try it one more time. There we go. Got it relatively straight that time. Now, I'm going to take another piece of tape, grab the end of the backing where I'd already started peeling it, and now the backing's coming off, and it's off. So, I'll take my label, and it's going to line up just on my trigger. I'm going to get it centered and straight. I'm going to push it down, making sure I get it stuck down through the center, no bubbles, and work my way towards the outside. And then I will slowly peel from one end, making sure not to peel the label off the blank. Once you get it started, it's pretty easy, and then you just have to pull it very slowly and steady pressure, or the Scotch tape will tear. There's label number one. Now I'll take my microfiber cloth again and just rub and make sure I get all of the air pockets out, that the corners are down, and I got all the residue off. Alright, there's label number one. I'm going to roll it over, and we're going to do the same thing with my logo here. Start with a longer piece of Scotch tape. Okay, I got it in the middle. There we go. It's on there pretty well. Short piece. Peel the backing off. Get it aligned where you want it, which is about right there. Dead center top. Same thing down the middle. The wrinkles out. Work your way down the edges. And there. Oh, see, I pulled it too fast and I tore. So now I'm going to go back the other way. go. Using the microfiber. And there are your labels. Okay, got the labels. The only thing I have left is I have to put my hook keeper. I'm going to put it right here in between the grips. We'll throw that in there and then we'll be ready for final epoxy. We'll be right back. Okay, well, hopefully you got most of it. I think we had a camera issue while I was doing the labels. Hopefully, like I said, we got most of it in there. We've got the labels on. There is a label video coming on just labels, so I'll get that out soon in case we have camera issues. So the only thing I have left to do is I'm going to put the hook keeper here in between the grips and we'll be ready for a coat of epoxy. So y'all stick around. The last thing in my box of little parts is the Keegan XLA hook keeper, which I really like these hook keepers. You've seen me put a bunch of them on. I don't use any other style of hook keeper. You can use it with Texas rig, never have to take your bait off the hook. You can use it with drop shot, you can use it with treble hooks, you can use it with anything. It's very handy hook keeper. Now all I got to do here real quickly is I'm going to pull out some masking tape. I'm going to put it on the bottom, on the trigger area. I'll take some of my 1/8 inch wide masking tape. I'm going to pin it down here in the split between the rear grips. I've already put the under wrap in this area and it's got a coat of epoxy on it, and that's just, you know, to keep a weight or treble hooks once you have your bait hooked in here from scratching and beating up the blanket itself. So all it takes, tape it down. We're going to pull a little bit of black thread, piece of tape to tie the tag in down here. I'll do a quick wrap on this. I'm going to go over and pin the top there. I'm going to pin the foot. I'll get out ahead of the foot a bit, cross over, and start my wrap. Get it up on the guy, or on the hook keeper foot, right there. Okay, pull this out of here. My tools at the other end. A few tools. I'm going to burnish this loose thread back in there. Get rid of my gaps. Pull that gap down. Okay. Tag here. Finish out my wrap. Get my thread pull in. Okay, that one is done. Pull tension. Take your razor blade, lay it down flat. Cut your tag. Gaps. Got one gap there. Burnish that out. You know. Now we are ready for some epoxy. Whoop, nope, we got just a little bit of a gap there I want to fix. And that got it. Okie doke. We'll get some epoxy mixed up, put the final coat on here. Be right back. So there it is, guys. In under 2 days, a complete build, start to finish. All I got left is a coat of epoxy, which I will put that on next. And I'll put a thin coat on, scrape most of it back off. Wait about 6 hours. Tonight I'll throw the final coat on, and then by tomorrow morning I can put the reel back on it and be ready to fish it. Again, it's only about 3.5, maybe 4 hours of real-time actual work to build a rod once you get good at it. Most of the time is consumed in waiting for something to cure or glue to set, which is why when I'm running a bunch of rods, I rotate them in and out. Most of the time I will let the epoxy cure 24 to 48 hours in between coats. I know the manufacturer recommends that after 24 you scuff it. Unless I let it sit a week or more, I'm probably not going to scuff it. The epoxy cure is pretty slow. I keep the temperature in the rod room here right at 70 degrees all the time. If it's in a hotter area, maybe it would cook off a little faster, but the way I build them in here, 24 to 48 in between coats of epoxy. You can do less. You just want to make sure that it's set enough to where it's not tacky, it's not picking up fingerprints. After it's been turning for maybe 4 to 6 hours, I'll just touch it with the back of my finger. If it pulls at all, I let it dry a little longer, but as long as it's not tacky, you can start your next coat. So I will do that. I'm going to put a coat of epoxy on here, and then after dinner, I will come back in the rod room here and I'll put my final coat. And in the morning, if it wasn't going to be 30 degrees here, I'd put a reel on it and go fish with it. But that was it for the 2-day Cobra rod build. Now, next month, there's a bunch of videos coming. I've got 2 things that are going to be happening. One is I'm going to break down rod building basics into little bitty chunks. I know these last 2 videos have been very long, but there's a lot of information in them. Next month, it's going to be 3-minute videos on every step of the rod build we just went through in these last 2 videos. Also coming next month are going to be the Voodoo rod builds. And I talked about it a little bit, but we have a partnership now with Voodoo Rods where they are putting kits together for you guys specifically to build your second and third and maybe even your first rod. I talked to Casey, he's still working on it. If you look on the website right now, you can scroll down in the shop tab to the very bottom and there's complete kits. There's a spot for complete kits. The kits aren't loaded in there yet, but that's happening in the next few weeks. I'll let you know when that kicks off. But they're going to be FDX designs that you can just pick your size and style rod, and all the parts are there for you to choose from. You don't have to worry about measuring. Everything will work together. Order it, get it, build it, and fish it. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I will see you next time.